Hello everyone and welcome to another video with me 320 Sim Pilots, and today we have a really exciting aircraft to look at. This is the Beechcraft Duke B60 from Microsoft Flight Simulator from Black Square and published by JustFlight. I've been looking forward to this airplane for a long time. We've seen some previews from JustFlight, and today we can finally have it in our hands and I can show you what this aircraft is all about and what makes it so special for an aircraft in Microsoft Flight Simulator. I will say that this is one of the most detailed simulations I've ever had the privilege to take on in a simulator, and I am absolutely chuffed to bits to be able to show it to you today. There are some amazing systems, details and depths in this aircraft, but also it's just a lovely machine in general, and the Beech Duke is I think one of the prettiest twin engine piston aircraft out there, and I absolutely love flying around in the sim, and I think it has a lot of unique characteristics that put it in a good place. It's tempting to see another twin-engine aircraft, a general aviation airplane in Microsoft Flight Simulator, and you could perhaps be dismissive, but I really want to encourage you not to make that mistake as you see the extra level of detail that we've got in this aircraft. It's a real treat to behold. This is coming soon, hopefully, for Microsoft Flight Simulator. Release date not quite firmed up yet, but within the next few weeks is the aim, I believe. And it's going to be priced at $33.99 for the individual aircraft, which comes to €42.95 or $47.99. And that will get you either the piston variant or the turbine variant. So there is also a turboprop variant. So the one you're looking at is the piston engine variant. There is the combined package, which will get you both for £49.99p, so that's $59.99, sorry, $69.99 or €59.99. So yeah, we'll talk about the pricing as we go through the video, but that is where it stands at the moment. That's the current plan, and this is, like I say, the piston version, the Grand Duke, the slightly modified performance package sort of version of the Duke. In this video, we'll take a look at both variants, including the other engines, and we're also going to take it for a flight, of course, run through the systems and procedures, and we'll see just how deep the simulation actually is. As ever, I am a real-world airline pilot, but none of this is for any real-world use. It's just to give you some extra context on your home simulations, and hopefully give you an idea of what this airplane's all about and if it's suitable for your hangar. Right, let's get started. So, to be clear, the price for an individual aircraft, so either the piston or the turbine, one or the other, would be £33.99p or €42.95 or $47.99. Now that's quite high. That's a fairly heavy price for a general aviation airplane, but we'll see in this video quite how this aircraft gets there. And you can have both of these, so you can have the turbine and the piston version if you pay the increased price of £49.99p or €59.99 or $69.99. Now I find that to be quite, and this is just my honest opinion at this stage, to be quite a high price for general aviation aircraft in Microsoft Flight Simulator. But that's not to say it's not deserved. It's just that is putting it in the higher bracket of add-ons to Microsoft Flight Simulator. Being a general aviation airplane doesn't actually matter. It's about the complexity of the simulation, and you'll see in this video that there is a lot of complexity in the simulation of these aircraft. It's really quite something. It's a remarkable add-on. So let's of course start with the exterior of this airplane, and there's some details I'm hoping that you might have noticed already. Have a look at the flags on the engine intake covers, and you'll see that they're actually flapping slightly in the wind. As we move down to the pitot covers, they too are blowing in the wind and with the correct direction. This is the level of detail we're talking about now with this airplane. It's really something I've not seen before. And it's interesting because I recently did a video on the Tomahawk, which I was so impressed with from JustFlight, and now already we're seeing another step up in general aviation, which is quite an amazing thing to come so close after it. But look at this, even the remove before flight tag here on the static port, just flapping gently in the wind. And yeah, I can actually prove to you that they change direction with the wind and they change with the speed. We can simply load up the weather, and I'll just change the direction of the wind, increase the speed. Now the wind takes the time to move, and there they go. Look at that, absolutely brilliant. And I've made it so windy the propellers are actually spinning with the wind. They're windmilling. Absolutely brilliant. And my ridiculous wind speed. So we'll put it back to something more normal. And that should stop those. Now you'll hear lots of great sounds throughout this video, and I intend to show you as many as I can, but the sounds are another thing that are just exemplary. They have gone through extreme amounts of effort. The Boris Audio have done those, and they are remarkably good, but we'll see that as we go through. I'll have special sections to show you the audio effects. As you move around the airplane, you'll see lots of nice detail and wear and tear and grime. If you can get the lighting just right on these panels, you'll see there is sort of lots of lots of the stains and bits of grime and grit. Let me just get the sun in the right place for you. There we go. We get the sun a bit lower, and I can show you, just see these little streaks and marks and scratches on all the surfaces, which is typical. This airplane was produced in the late 1960s, and it was originally only the piston version, and later was modified by a different company into the turbine version, which we'll see later. But yeah, they've done a really nice job on the detailing and the different textures that you'd expect to see. You got extra details like along the leading edge. You have these vortex generators. They all look completely accurate. These are actually used to disturb the airflow over the top of the wing, which sounds sort of counterintuitive, but because we want smooth air over the top of the wing, and if it's just rough, it's usually in a stall. But what this is for is it puts a bit of energy into that airflow layer, and that means it sticks further back down the wing, which keeps the control over the aileron. So you see vortex generators on quite a lot of aircraft. 737s even have them along the leading edge, and obviously lots of general aviation airplanes. But yeah, the proportions all look lovely to me to make it look just like the Duke, which I think is one of the nicest profiles out there. Really fast looking airplane, sort of one of those airplanes that looks fast sitting on the ground, and yeah, it's a pretty premium airplane. Certainly not for the cheap way of going flying. It can go up to 30,000 feet, this piston version, because they're supercharged engines. So they have, turbocharged engines. So they have the ability to just climb and climb and climb. And that's one of the reasons I like this piston version. It's very interesting to take piston engines up to this limit of their performance, really. So yeah, I mean, I can take you around all the exterior and just not find any bad angles. It's great. These are the cowl flaps underneath, which you can adjust in the sim, and we'll see that. It's a bit of grime behind the engine, which I like. Always a big fan of that. So yeah, again, looks can be deceiving. You look at it on the Microsoft Flight Simulator menu and you just go, oh yeah, that's nice. But I think as you get into the airplane and start to use it more, you'll see exactly how detailed this machine really is. It's all sitting there underneath. Always worth checking out the grip tape for where you walk. Looks pretty nice. And there's more of those marks, and you can even, if you get the sun just right, you can see there's extra scratches around the screw heads and so on where they've been fitted and taken off and fitted again. So yeah, absolutely lovely. It's a very clean aircraft still. This is a well looked after one, but again, if you could afford to fly around in a Duke, you probably can afford to have it kept clean as well, would be my guess. So what we're going to do now is jump into the airplane, and we'll show you the checklist and the depth of the simulation, which I can't wait to show you. So Black Square has a new EFB, and here we are on the flight deck, so let's take a look at it. Now you just click down here, it's like this tablet down here, and it just pops onto the yoke. Let's just take a quick look around and enjoy the details around the flight deck. Nothing seems out of place. I like that you get different textured instrument panels as well, depending on the livery you have, which I really like. And this is quite a nice sort of retro beige colour, and yeah, all with these beautiful 3D gauges. So all very nice, nothing amiss so far. And if we look down on the EFB, we'll see some of the great things about it. So in the options sections, you can choose which sort of avionics system you want. So at the moment we have the GNS 530, but you could select the GNS 750, click, and you'll see it just takes a second, and it will swap around all the screens into the different systems that you can have. So you can download these from as freeware add-ons, or you can just go with what's in the airplane. Now I'm going to just go with the 530 that sort of defaults to, but we're not really going to spend too much time using the GPS in this airplane. Now, I like flying these airplanes for the proper IFR style flying, but there we go. You can see strobe effect on the clouds and the shocks for loading down here. Now if we move over to payload, you can select, don't want to do the gear, we can select lots of different details. So I'm going to put it into litres and kilograms, and you can choose the weight in the different compartments around the airplane, how much fuel you want in the main tanks, if you want passengers in the rear seats. And to start giving you an idea of the detail, there is an oxygen system on this airplane. This airplane can actually climb up to, like I say, 30,000 feet, so it's pressurized. So you might need to use oxygen. So we have up here the oxygen, if required, plug-in system, and it is of course pressurized, as I was saying. So you have a cabin pressurization system down here. So this is a complicated airplane. Now the oxygen system will actually drain faster depending on how many passengers are sitting in the airplane and how high up you are. So that's just something to consider on the level of detail they've gone to. We've then got schematics for the left engine and the right engine, which are currently sitting empty, so they're just still, and it shows you even where the piston is in its cycle there, which is just amazing. Electric schematics, cabin schematics, and then the list of failures. I thought that sun would not be too in the way, but it is a bit in the way, so let's just move the sun out of the way. There we go. Good. Right, now of course you can open up the doors, so let's just do that. And I love the fact that the key appears on the instrument panel, so you can't forget it. You're reminded that you need to go and lock it. Just another thing about the detail. And there you go, we have the nose cargo door and the passenger door sitting open there, which is great. And there's that footrest. Such a neat airplane, really, really like it. So let's close the nose baggage and the cabin door. And we can see that the native checklists are included. I'm a big fan of this, and these are actually some really well integrated ones. So you just select it, and you can see by ticking on the eye which you're looking for. So if we go to pre-flight inspection complete, control locks removed. So let's just get rid of that EFB for a bit and look at this. We can get rid of the control locks, get rid of the throttle locks, and then we can say tick those are removed. Seatbelts and seats are secure. Cabin door is now latched. We closed up the door. Excellent news. And nose baggage door latch, parking brake set, landing gear down, electrical switches off, avionics off, oxygen pressure 1550 to 1850. So here you go. Where's the oxygen pressure gauge? Well, you tick on the little eye and it takes you down to it. And there it is. There's the blue needle highlighted. It's in between those ranges, so that's all good. Circuit breakers are all in. They are functional. Look at this. Absolutely brilliant. And there's quite a lot. This is a complicated airplane, but they are all in. Intercooler air, we're going to leave those off, and this is on a sliding mechanism, so I quite like that. You can sort of set it exactly where you want to. But yeah, we're going to leave that off. Cabin pressure shut off, open. They're in the open, and again, these are on a sliding mechanism, so you have them pushed in. Alternate static air is to normal. That's in the normal guarded position. CO detector. So the carbon monoxide, you can get a carbon monoxide leak, and the detector will work, which I think is amazing. But there we go. So you can test that. Environmental mode off. That's off down there, and the flaps are up. And again, you just tick through. Prop sync off. So that is a feature which we'll talk about later, which is used to synchronize the propellers to stop that sort of warbling, like sound as they vibrate in and out of synchronization, which is really annoying. Propellers should be at the high RPM, which they are. It's the propeller levers, max RPM. Mixture is at full rich, so let's move these up to full rich. There we go. And the trims should be centered. So rudder trim, aileron trim, and the pitch trim are centered at 0. Fuel selectors are down here. They're both in the on position. And that is the pre-flight cockpit complete. Next is before starting engine. Now, this is a complex aeroplane. It is also surprisingly easy to get to grips with for the basics, and then it'll be hard, I think, or a lot of learning to get really masterful of it. We'll see that later on as we go through the video. So we're actually already up to the getting ready to start the engines. So look at this. First thing we're going to do is put the beacon light on. So let me get rid of the yoke. And we'll put the beacon on. This will be the red flashing beacon outside the airplane. Now it's not on yet, it's this little red light here, but it's not on because we don't have power. So next step is battery master on. Battery master is over here, on. And now our beacon springs to life. And the airplane itself, and you'll start to hear gyros and all sorts of things whirring, and the sound effects are just fantastic. Bus volts 23 minimum, so we look over at the bus voltage, and that is sitting at 25-ish, so that's good. Fuel quantities check. Make sure we have enough fuel for our mission, which we do today. Cowl flaps opened fully. Now the cowl flaps are those flaps underneath the engine. They're used to draw air through the engine. So on the ground you want them open fully because you want as much air going over the engine as possible. Reason for that is that the engines will overheat otherwise. If we go outside you can actually see them. So here's the cowl flap here, and it's in the open position. And if I close that one, you can actually hear the motor run. And you can tell when it's closed because you actually hear it, the motor sort of whine in a different tone. How brilliant is that? And now you'll see this cowl flap is closed. This would potentially overheat the engine. Oh, and you can see we've got the covers on the pitos. We need to remove those. Pitos in the engine intake. Good catch. Let's get rid of them. Pitot covers, engine covers. We'll leave the chocks in. No, let's remove the chocks as we're getting ready to go. Good, so we'll open those cowls. So cowl flaps are now open fully. Enunciators up here. You can run the test to make sure they're all working and then consider what's on, which is all as expected. Now here it gets a little bit more complicated. So left boost pump, we're going to put that on, fuel boost pump, and you can hear it run. Tick. You can hear it, audible, which it is indeed. Let me just turn up the sounds a little bit for you while we run through the startup so you can get a good idea of them. So that's audible. Then you turn it off because we know it's working. Now right boost pump on, audible, off. And next we're going to engine start. Now there's different starts, hot start, cold start. We're going to go with the cold start on today's video. So first of all, pre-oiler, and let's go, I think we start with the right engine, so we're going to start the right engine first. So here's the schematic of it, and this is a live schematic. I really like this. So what we need to do is the pre-oiler, right for 30 seconds. Pre-oiler, so we're going to get some oil around the engine. You put it to right, run that for 30 seconds. And look at this, the valves change and the pre-oiler runs. Now if I turn it off, you can see it spool down. It's a really, really impressively smooth gauge. I actually have never seen such a smooth interface put into a simulation. You'll see as we go through, everything in it works really nicely. So right for 30 seconds, then right oil pressure greater than 15 psi. So we look up here, here's the right oil pressure, so it's not there yet, and now we've got 15 psi. That's good. Right mixture, full rich, it is full rich. Right propeller, high RPM, it is high RPM. Right throttle, we're going to go fully open. And then right boost pump on for 5 to 8 seconds. So that right boost pump on, you can hear it. 5 to 8 seconds. We want a right fuel flow up here of greater than 50 pounds per hour. It is sitting at about 100, so that's all good. That said it's 5 seconds, so we'll turn it off. Right throttle, now we bring it back to sort of a starting position. And then right starter engage. So that is us, ready to start up that right engine. So let's give it a go. So we'd shout out clear prop, and then we go. And watch the schematics here. You can see the magneto turn on as I swap between, and then we go both magnetos are on. See that they are now lit, and then we go start. We're going to hold it down, hold it down, hold it down. We're trying to get this engine to life. We've sprayed some fuel into it. We've given it the oil. It's just a bit cold, and there it goes. And look at that. How cool is this? All the temperatures rising, cylinder head temperatures increasing. You can see where the air is going in. You see the oil pump running. But anyway, let's get on with our checklist. Right throttle, 1000 to 1200 RPM, so it needs a little bit more throttle. We weren't far off. Good. Right oil pressure in the green arc within 30 seconds. It's over here and it's in the green arc. Right fuel pressure annunciator extinguished, so left hand fuel pressure showing that right is extinguished. And the right generator can now come online. So here's the right gen, online. Right generator load, 0.25 below in 2 minutes. So here's the load, and it's right down nice and low. And we're checking that it isn't still charging something or causing too many issues. Brush voltage, 28 volts, which is down here, and they are. Edge instruments check. So now we come and look and check that the oil pressure is in the green. The oil temperature and cylinder temperature will now increase gradually. And we've got decent manifold pressure. Good. By the way, this is the manifold pressure, the right. So this is a turbocharged fuel-injected engine, so it's a little bit different to a normal piston engine. These are extra dials. We don't just work on RPM on this. So these are turbocharged engines. They work slightly different to normal piston engines. We don't just have the RPM, we have to think about other things. And yeah, the manifold pressure is actually lower because that's ambient pressure, the 30, and it's lower down because we are drawing air through the engine. So yeah, a little bit confusing and unintuitive to see that is the engine that's running and this is the engine that's failed. Battery temperature below 120F, and the battery temperature gauge is shown tucked away over here. There it is. Yeah, nice and cold. Pre-oiler, left for 30 seconds. So now we go to the left engine, sitting there nice and cold. Let's run the pre-oiler. Needs 30 seconds of that. It's just great, isn't it? This is that engine ticking away. And the different sounds as you go around the aeroplane. Boris AudioWorks does have a video out about this aircraft where you can see that the different temperature can change the way the engine sounds and the way different pumps sound and so on, which is just remarkable. I've never seen anything like it. Okay, we've had 30 seconds. Left oil pressure greater than 15 psi. Left mixture full rich. Left propeller high RPM, left throttle fully open. So you can see there's no fuel in the engine right now. Oh, so we're going to run that throttle fully open, and let's see if we can see it happen. Left boost pump on for 5 to 8 seconds. 1, 2, 3, and we're looking for fuel flow greater than 50, which we have at 100, and you can see the fuel building up in the cylinders there, and then we can turn the boost pump off. We don't want too much fuel or it counts as a flooded engine. So you can see here we have the fuel in the engine, this blue showing it, but we could flood the engine if we put too much in. So it's important to get these things right, which I just think is fantastic simulating. We'll set the same throttle power, and then we'll start the left engine. So clear prop, it's all clear, and then we'll see the schematic again. Quicker startup on that one, maybe a bit more fuel in it. And now same things, looking for 1,000 to 2,000 RPM, which we've got, but you can see it's slightly out of sync, and you hear that chugging between the two engines. So let's just try and get them up together. That feels a bit more comfortable. Left oil pressure is in the green arc in 30 seconds. Left fuel pressure annunciator extinguished. Left generator can now come on. Left generator load, again we want it below 0.25, which it is. Bus volts are still 28 volts, so that means the electrical system is working nicely. Engine instruments check. Pre-oiler can go off. Battery temperature is still nice and low, below 140. We're not doing an engine start hot or flooded. Flooded would have been if we had too much fuel in there. So next is the after start checklist. Again, relatively straightforward. Let's close up this window so we can hear ourselves a bit better. Listen to that, just fantastic. Everything has a sound in this. I'm really impressed with the amount of sounds we've got. Anyway, first of all, boost pumps on if above 32 degrees. It is not, we're in the UK, so we can forget about that happening. So let's go to the lights as required. So just get rid of this EFB, and we're going to put the navigation lights on, and I'll put the taxi lights on just before we taxi. I'm also going to turn on the panel lights, because for our video today, I always like having the panel lights on. And you'll see them. There you go, you can see that sort of red glow. Weather radar off standby. The weather radar is off. Actually, no, it's not. There we go. It's in that. So we have the weather radar off because we don't want to radiate the personnel in front of us, and then we can turn on our avionics. Master. There we go, and that's going to bring to life the GPS, the radios, and so on. Inverter can go to the main system. There we go. And the inverter annunciator is now extinguished. The light up here. Cabin temperature and mode as desired. So let's put it into auto heat. It's in the UK. Mixture lean for taxi and parking brake release. So we're ready for taxi, and then we can go and do the power checks where we'll get to see more detail on this airplane, and we'll talk about the de-icing system and all sorts. It gets absolutely silly, the level of detail, including on the visual model that we have. Again, look at these texturing. Really impressed with this. Absolutely love it. So let's get this beautiful machine taxied out and get some power checks done. So we'll release the, actually let's just say OK to the GPS, then put it to a nav display once it figures out where it is. And what I'm going to do is just release that parking brake. Now the ground handling is very nice actually. This is one of the more manoeuvrable airplanes I've tried in the sim. I quite enjoy taxiing it, which is unusual for Microsoft Flight Simulator. Don't look. There's a nice tomahawk there. Lovely. So it's got a nice sort of weight to it again. It feels decently heavy on the rudders. I quite like it. It does run away a little bit at 1,000 RPM, so I'm going to reduce that down so we don't have to ride the brakes. And hopefully you'll get a sense of how nice these sounds are. So we're going to taxi out now and run our power checks. We can beat our colleagues over there in their Traumahawk. Now the wind is basically calm today, so we're going to just point the airplane down the runway a little bit for our power checks, and you're going to see, like I say, that the level of complexity we have in the underlying simulation of this this aircraft. It's really remarkable. We're going to also look at the de-icing systems, the electrical systems, and once we get in the air we can look at the failure systems and of course the handling of the airplane. So let's just maneuver ourselves a little bit over here out of the way. We might get taxied through by that Tomahawk, we shall find out. Just trying to get this right. I haven't had to maneuver a general aviation airplane for a little while. So we just get a bit of power on and then swing it round to the right, making an effort to point it down the runway, and then I'll set the brakes there. That'll do. Good. Let's run through the power checks time. So these are always quite fun. These are called run-up checks on here. So first of all, parking brake is set, annunciators test and consider. Test them, they all light, nothing going on. Remote compass slave and aligned. Now again, if you get lost, great thing, you can just tick this and it will show you, and yet they're aligned properly. That says 332, and if we look up at our compass, it says 332, and it's in the gyro slave mode. So this means that the gyroscope is slave to the compass, so they should be aligned really. Fuel selectors cross feed. This is to make sure that we can feed from either. Oh, look at this, the armrest even moves. Didn't know that. Excellent. Yeah, we're going to cross feed them to make sure that the fuel cross feed works, so we can feed either engine from either tank. Important on a multi-engine airplane like this with several tanks. Boost pumps can go on. Fuel boost pumps on. Mixture full rich. They're both at fully rich. I didn't lean them for the taxi. I've never had to do that on an airplane, so I'm not sure what it means. Throttle 2000 RPM. So I'm going to increase the RPM. And don't get confused. You have manifold pressure, and here's the RPM. So it's easy to get them mixed up. So I'm going to increase. I want 2000 on the RPM. And listen to those sounds. I've never heard anything like it in a sim. Amazing. Listen how it changes as we move around. Never had anything like it in a sim, I really haven't. Okay, so throttle 2000 RPM, exercise the left propeller, we want a 300 RPM drop. So I'm just going to bring up the checklist, there we go, which shows the engine getting warm now, you have that nice orange glow. So we want to see a 300 RPM drop, so let's just tick that, right. So we just take it back, and then there's the drop. And what we're doing here is checking that the variable pitch propellers are working. So you're exercising the oil system in the propeller hub to drive those propellers to a more coarse position, which actually slows them down through the air. It's like going into a higher gear, which drags the RPM back. Next we're going to check the magnetos. So we can see here both magnetos are lit. If I scroll to 1, the right magneto turns off and we get the RPM drop, as you'd expect. And then if I go to both, it increases again. And as you see, if I put it to the other one, the other one turns off. We can do the same on the other engine. Just check you get the drop and check that it comes back to life. Instrument air, green and no lights. Left generator can go off. And now we're checking the electrical system. Left generator load 0, so you look down here and you see the left generator is at 0 load. Right generator off. And you'll see here, notice the lights dim. I think this is a great feature. So the voltage actually affects the lighting system in this aircraft. Again, another level of detail. So as we take both generators offline and it swaps the batteries, it just dims everything as it struggles to maintain the voltage. Look at that. It's quite subtle, but you can actually see the lights on the annunciators and the panel floodlights all dim. Let me make it nighttime for a second for you. Look at that. Isn't that amazing? So, generator's off. Right generator load is at 0. Left generator can go on. Check that the load is above 0.25, which it is. We've got a lot of load on the left, so that means it's taking the strain which we want. Now we can turn the right generator on. Right generator above 0.1, which it is. Throttle now, we're going to increase it a bit more, 2,500 RPM. I've never seen a several stage power run-up check like this, but this is a complicated airplane with lots of things to test, and certain things will only test at the right engine power setting. So cockpit window closed, which it is. Cabin altitude, so here we're going to test the pressurization system. And look at the detail here. Cabin altitude field elevation, which it is about sea level, which is good. Cabin differential, which is the differential pressure between the outside and the inside, is also at 0, which is the second needle there. Cabin climb rate should be at 10 o'clock, which I haven't. Oh yeah, there's the needle here, which it is 10 o'clock, probably about there. Cabin altitude goal, 1,000 feet below elevation. So all I need to do is put this cabin altitude to 1,000 feet below where we are. So we're about sea level. So I'll wind this down to minus 1,000 feet, and you'll see why. This is a really cool test. I like this. So set it to minus 1,000. Then we can put the test mode, and you'll see that the cabin actually descends over here. So watch the cabin climb needle. So this means the airplane is now pressurizing the cabin down, because it's trying to get down to minus 1,000 feet, which works, which is absolutely brilliant. So now we're going to set this to our assigned altitude. So let's say we're going to go along at 14,000 feet. Then we'd have it set, which would give us 3,000 feet cabin altitude. Cabin pressure mode normal. And now we'll go throttle 1500 RPM again. It's really crazy. I've not seen one like this. I like it though. Scooting around different RPMs to do different checks. I mean, if you think about the price of the fuel we've burnt already. So now we're going to test the de-icing system. So let me get rid of the EFB, get rid of the yoke, and we're going to put the propeller heat on. So propeller heat, they both go on, and then we do the ground tests. And I can show you if I get this right. This is pretty fiddly to show you, but the ground test switch is down here, and what we're going to look at is then check the propeller amp switch over here. So as I push the ground test, the propeller amp needle over here swings up into this position. Let me just get the right zoom, so hopefully we can see both. So I'm going to press the ground test, and then look here, and it swings into the green line. How cool is that? So that's working. So what we're testing is that the heat is actually drawing current, which suggests the system should be working. So the propeller heat can go off, windshield heat goes on, and we see the voltage increase there, which is correct, and the ammeters increase over here. If you look at the the loads on the generators, as I turn off the windshield heat, they drop these dials over here. Watch them again. On, off. Now if we go to the EFB and go to electrical, we can see this sort of thing. You can see the switch, you can see the load, you can see where it's going. Absolutely ridiculous level of detail on this. Look at that. Amazing. So they did increase, windshield heat goes off, and now we do the same with the pitot heats. We'll put the pitot heat, and you basically run all the electrical systems and check that the ammeter does increase. There's not much for the pitots, but it does move these ever so slightly. The fuel vent heat as well, so you do the same here. Check the ammeters do increase and decrease, which is good. So the heating switches can all go off now. And now surface de-ice you set to manual, and you see a boot pressure of 15 psi. So the boot pressure is actually a hidden dial. It's down here. Now this is going to be hard to see, but if I show you, there's a dial there, and now I'm going to put the manual pressure, and there it goes. That inflates the boots. Now, this is a typical piston or turboprop engine de-ice system. What it does is it is literally a de-ice. It removes ice from the airplane. It's what all these black lines are around the airplane. These are boots, and they're just rubber, and they've got lots of strips in them. What happens is the air inflates those strips and breaks off the ice on the leading edge of the control surfaces or the flight surfaces. That's where the ice will build up when the airplane's in flight. It doesn't work on the ground. You have to get the airplane de-iced with fluid or whatever, but yeah, they're on the leading edge of the tail and the leading edge of the wing, and they're very, very important. They allow this airplane to fly in known icing conditions, which is certainly something you would want on an airplane this expensive. But what we're going to do is, if I jump into the drone, and I'm going to show you the detail on the exterior model now. This really impressed me. But you can actually see the boots inflate, which is not a very common feature. So here's the leading edge of the wing, here's that boot. You can see the airplane gently sort of chugging away, and then I'm going to inflate the boot system by doing a one cycle. And now look, there they are. How brilliant is that? And that's how it works. So, and I've flown an airplane that has this system, and what happens is the ice builds up on the wing, and then this suddenly inflates, and it all just breaks off and goes back, and then they deflate gradually like that. And the airplane will actually cycle it. So we just did one cycle there. But yeah, I just think that's so cool. There they are, inflated all on the tail again. This is serious simulationing. I think that's great, and that's really cool. You could take this airplane out in some miserable icing conditions, and you'll see that, and you'll be, I would suggest, partially reassured, although I wouldn't get overly confident with that system. It has a habit of getting water in it, things like that, which also freezes up. Anyway, that all works. And now we can put our throttle back to 1,000 to 1,200 RPM. Yeah, the boots excited me a lot because that's something I have lived with, and yeah, to see that. So fuel sectors, we know the crossfeed is working nicely, so put them both back to on. Pitch trim power needs to go on, otherwise the autopilot won't work. And now we can run the electric trimmer. So that is working. I'd be tempted to run full and free there. Autopilot test you can do as well. I'm not too worried about the autopilot today, but you would turn it on, check that the yoke goes the right way. which is what this bit's all about, and the flight director as well. So there is an autopilot system. I've had a few issues with this one, but this is a preview version. I must stress that this is a preview build of this aeroplane. So yeah, there are parts of it that aren't yet, you know, it's not definitely what you'll get shipped on the launch day. Cabin door naturally light extinguished. Flight controls free and correct. Always worth checking, especially in the sim, because they can lock them out. Departure altitude set. So we just climb up to 3,000 feet. Panel lights, parking brake, and the next is the takeoff checklist. Mixture, max power. Oil temperatures, 35-degree minimum. So we've run our engine quite hard there, so the temperature is actually quite high. We've got battery temperature below 120 F. Battery is nice and cool. Battery charge, and that's light is extinguished. Battery's not charging. That's good stuff. Lighting, transponder, weather radar. So there we go. Next is the takeoff, where we just go full open on the throttles, and away we go. Beautiful. Okay, so here we are on the runway. It's time to get going. So remember, we're going to set ourselves full power and then get underway. So that is going to be with, I'm going to take one stage of flaps today. Release the brakes. Check that we don't overboost the engines. Now the ground handling is really nice. It behaves as I would expect it to. You can gently apply rudder and crosswinds, and it does respond not too much grip. And we're going to rotate there, release that rudder, positive climb, gear up. It's a powerful airplane. They are very different to single engine pistons, these twin engine airplanes, and this thing can go to 30,000 feet, remember. So if you're used to single engine, or you've come from the Trauma Hawk in your previous flight, this is going to be quite a remarkable airplane to jump into as a difference. It's really quite something. Just ridiculous performance. So let's lower the nose now, start accelerating. We're already past 1,000 feet, absolutely ridiculous. Get the flaps up. Start trimming out and accelerating. And let's see how it flies. Beautiful. And you can just keep climbing now. It will just climb and climb and climb. Where we are now is not really where this airplane is designed to be. It wants to be nice and high. You get into some really thin air. There's our altitude alert going. So let's keep climbing up. Let's go up to something more sensible, like 10,000 feet. You'll see that has no trouble getting there. Like I say, there is an autopilot and there is a GPS if you want to use those. But I'm just going to focus on flying the airplane and how it handles. Now, this is a twin-engine airplane, and there are some big changes to twin-engine airplanes over your single engine, in particular an engine failure. So we will have a look at how the airplane handles that as well. Something you'll see down here is this little EDM 760. This is an engine monitoring instrument. Now, there is a whole host of things this can do. It looks deceptively simple. You have these two buttons and then the option to press them both at the same time by clicking in the middle here, which is quite clever, which would take us through different measurements. Here's our gallons per hour. But what you can do is use it to lean the engines out as you climb if you want to get the best performance out of your engines. Black Square say this is the most advanced simulation of this instrument ever put into a flight simulator, and I can believe them. It's a very, very detailed simulation of what is actually a really complex thing. If you've ever been in an airplane like this, these high performance piston engines, they're not very self-controlled. You haven't got full authority digital engine control, VADEC, which is what we'd have on a turbine engine like the PT6 version, which is one of the reasons I actually prefer this variant. I like flying around the piston engines because you get a bit more management in those engines versus the turboprop, although there are still aspects of the turboprop which we'll see later on. But yeah, it's amazing to see. So what you've got here is a cylinder head temperatures, and then you can actually use the system. Now, I don't fully understand it. I need to practice with it, but you can do clever things like lean the engine, and you'll see that as I take fuel out of the engine, We don't actually lose power. What happens is you start to increase the cylinder head temperature, and there you go, it suddenly starts climbing, and you can use this system to get to the exact most efficient point. Although we did lose power on the engine there a little bit by messing up. But you can use it to get to the most efficient point in the fuel leaning. Fuel leaning is when you actually reduce the fuel in the engine to match the fact that the air is getting thinner. So it doesn't really come into play until you get higher up, but there you go. Now, Black Square does provide a full set of manuals for this aircraft, so it's quite impressive. You can find those in the installation. And they claim that this airplane performs to within 2% of the pilot operator's handbook, which is quite a claim and really quite something. So the aerodynamics and the engine parameters are within 2%, which is really amazing. So here we have the en route climb checklist, mixture max power, so you'd adjust it accordingly. Propellers, we want to reduce the RPM to 2750. Remember, this is a complex airplane, so we can actually reduce the RPM of the propellers, and we're going to set those to 2750, so that's 26, so it's a little low. About there. And then manifold pressure to 35.5, so that's over here, so manifold pressure reduces. So remember, it's a bit like changing gears. We are allowed to, on this airplane, set the propeller RPM. That isn't a show of our power. The manifold pressure is more likely a show, and a combination of the two. So now we've done that. The cowl flaps should be open. The cowl flaps are indeed open, because they were open to start and we haven't touched them. And we can also check that on our little tablet. If I go to the engine, you can see a diagram of the cowl flap, which is shown up here, cowl flap. And if I motor the left cowl flap closed, you can actually see it slowly moving on that diagram over there. And I'll show you what happens if we run the cowl flaps closed while the engine's at such a high power setting. But as you can imagine, it's not good for the engine. You can see here wear and tear is also modelled. We have engine condition 92%. The right engine is actually happy because it's got the cowl flap open and we're running it nice and hot, but that's fine because it's not running as hot as the poor left engine, which we are now just brutally degrading. And you'll start to see the temperatures on these gauges change. It's really quite cool. Another little way you can see this is the weather radar. Now this does work in the sense that the Microsoft Flight Simulator weather system does work, or weather radar does work, but it's not exactly, it's not spot on to how a real weather radar would work, as you come to expect from Microsoft Flight Simulator now. We can turn off the boost pumps, so we'll turn those off. We can turn on the prop sync, which will remove. You actually have a little black and white dial showing that the propellers aren't quite in sync. It's going slightly to the left. So I believe. No, wrong way. So you can fiddle all day, and this is true of these high-performance complex piston aircraft. You can spend all day. Let's just start to 15, working out these temperatures and the RPM. So you can see it's going slightly right now. So let's put the prop sync system on. And that should, as long as they're close enough, be able to synchronize them for us and remove that sort of effect, like we say. So now you start to see a difference in temperature between the engines. The right engine ever so slightly different shade to the left one, and we should really go a little bit faster. We're running a little bit slow here, which means we're not getting enough air through those engines to get to decent temperatures. But yeah, this is all to do with sorting out temperatures, leading the fuel to get the most power out of the engines, and also to get the cylinder head temperatures at the right position, that you're not wearing out your engine. And you're not burning too much fuel. It's a piece of artwork to get all that right. If we look inside, we can also see that the pressurization system should be working. So we have a cabin altitude and a differential pressure all working there. Cabin is climbing gently because I said we're going to 14,000. So let's do that. Just really fantastic. Now, over here on the weather radar, you can go to the nav screen and you actually see the engine condition. So 92%, 100% on the left, and then you can repair them, refill your oxygen, recharge the batteries, and so on. So that's quite a handy little interface. I like that a lot. So, there's our electrical system. Yeah, it's great. Oh, and here's the cabin system as well, all shown. You can see where the air's coming in, where the pressurization's going, the defrosters. So we can actually run those if we want to. You can change the different valves. It's amazing. Look at that. Different pump start. If you go, you can turn on the air conditioning pump. It's really something. Now, of course, we have our GPS, so you can put an airport in there if you wanted to. And we have our heading bug, we have our horizontal situation indicator. You can set your course, you can tune your VOR or your VOR lock up here. You can choose which microphone you want to use. It's like I say, all the I would call basics are there, but they're not quite basics. And by the way, you can just click on the controls there to engage them. Not something you want to do in the cruise here. So if it's just to level out a little bit, bring the power back a bit. Not sure what the cruise power setting would be. $2,500 RPM. There you go. That's what we'll be running at. And you're sort of into your cruise. Reaching our 15,000 feet now. Fast aeroplane this. You can seriously cover some distance, even though it's piston aeroplane. You know, we are high up now. We're cruising. We're pressurized. This is a luxury machine. So let's have a look at the. Oh, by the way, you can move the sun visor around wherever you want it, which is really, I love that. Yeah, let's have a look at an engine failure. So let's say we've mistreated this poor left engine and it finally gives way. So you can actually go. Well, actually, let's have a look at the other failures you can do. You could fail to set a magneto. So let's fail the left engine, left magneto, fail. And if I go to the left engine, you can see the left magneto is not running, and that triggers a slight RPM drop on that engine. Right engine, they're both running. And you can also reset all failures in here. So you can go through here and you can do generators, you can fail electrical buses. It's amazing. And you can choose a minimum time before. Really cool stuff. You can then set a global failure rate and just have failures happen as and when. Another neat feature in this airplane that I really like is that the dials can actually get stuck. So if we were to, let me change the airspeed a bit, so take the power off and you can see the airspeed reducing. If the needle can get a bit stuck, you can actually tap on the glass and you can just see that little shake of the needle and it will unstick it, which it works on all the needles. You can just see them shake a little bit and you can actually hear a little tapping sound as you tap the glass. Now I was taught to be very, very careful and actually avoid tapping the glass if you can. So you can tap next to the instrument to sort of dislodge it, but tapping the glass is risky strategy because of course if you break it, you've broken your instrument. But yeah, all the needles or all the instruments you can tap. Look, if you tap here, you get all three shake. I think that's absolutely brilliant. What a great little feature. So yeah, if your instruments get stuck, that's what you need to do to try and get them back to life. It's just fantastic. Awesome. So let's shut down an engine and just see how the airplane behaves. So of course a propeller engine like this with constant speed propeller, what will happen is if you lose power on one engine, and we can do that by reducing the throttle, you actually get a little warning light to show you which engine is potentially losing power, and that system is simulated. I think that's really cool. And there you go, the airplane starts to dive off that side. So that's to help you identify which engine is having the loss of power, because like I say, it's not always that intuitive over on this set of instruments, especially with two needles like this. Anyway, so you have your loss of power, and you need to drive that engine into the feathered position, because if we just take the power off, that engine will actually drag us down. You see, look how quickly it drags the airplane to the left. Our left engine's failed, so the airplane's going to dive to the left, and it basically wants to roll into the ground. It's not good at all. So obviously you're going to counteract that by putting in the amount of rudder and aileron you need to keep the airplane flying straight and level. Although actually I would expect need to descend from this altitude if we did lose an engine. So I'm using right rudder and right aileron to counteract that at the moment, mostly right rudder. But it's going to drag the airplane down. If we actually were to fail that engine, which I can do by bringing the mixture all the way back, and you'll see that red flashing light now to tell me there's a big power loss in that engine, and it's because we need to maneuver the propeller, and that's why it's on the propeller lever there. So that engine is still spinning. So that we know that the left engine is turned off now. I've turned it off, I've taken the fuel away from it, and yet it's spinning away. What's happening is, I wonder actually if we go to the... Yeah, you can see here the pistons are still spinning around. That's because the air is now working like a windmill over that propeller, because it was in a position to produce thrust. It's now having a negative effect, and it's actually spinning the engine around. So let's feather that engine by dragging the propeller lever to the feather position. And now it should, hopefully, we'll see it out the window, slow itself down. And there you go. You see each cylinder, each piston there reducing in speed, and now that propeller is across the wind, so it's no longer spinning in the wind, it's just sort of idly ticking over there as we sidestep. So now I've removed that drag. We've got a lot less drag now, and most of the airplanes, twin engine propeller airplanes, can't fly if one of the engines is not feathered and it's failed. It's incredibly dangerous. There's been some alarming accidents with it. So now I'm going to get some, let's try and get this the right way around. It's a little hard to do. I'm using an Xbox controller here, so I'm having to use some right rudder and right aileron. And then you're basically trying to center your side slip indicator down here. So it needs a tiny bit more, and probably a little bit of right aileron, and that's just going to get the airplane flying level. And now hands off. Yeah, we are having to descend a little bit, and I've probably gone a bit too much there. Let's get rid of some of that. Let's make it a little bit to the left. As the airspeed increases, you'll have to change the trim you've set, and so on. But yeah, I like it. So we've reduced that drag a lot, and now the airplane is almost leveling out, even at 15,000 feet. And there's that engine just ticking over. Great feature, of course, of a twin-engine airplane. We don't have to overstress ourselves. We have the option to continue flying on one engine, but you would want to land relatively quickly. You don't want it to work too hard on that one remaining engine. But yeah, there you go. That system works. If I were to turn off the magnetos, but you can see there, look at them turning. As soon as I unfeather the propeller a bit, I can drive it back and it will windmill. Now it's spinning, and then if I turn on the magnetos and introduce fuel, it's like starting the engine. It will actually ignite. And now we can reduce our trims back to where they were. If I get it right. Once I get the power back on the engine. There we go. Gotta remember to do all the bits. And now we're back on both our engines. Beautiful. So yeah, I like the handling of it on the single engine, and the performance tables are in the manual provided with this aircraft, which I think is really, really cool. Something else that's quite interesting is that there is a simulation of overspeeding. When I started learning to fly airplanes, or when I was flight simming when I was younger, I couldn't understand why airplanes had a maximum speed. I sort of thought, well, why can't they just go as fast as they want? Well, let's show you. I'm going to go full nose down trim, drive the trim, drive the trim, drive the trim. So on lots of airplanes, it's to do with getting supersonic in some part of it, but in this airplane, you'll see here, as we reach overspeed, look at that oscillation. And now this is the airplane starts to oscillate and get this vibration through the whole aircraft, and that it could potentially be fatal. And that's something that can happen to real airplanes. I think that's a really great simulation they've done there. Really interesting to see it put in. Actually starts shaking away, and you just get this horrible, horrible feeling. I mean, incredibly dangerous, rhythmic. I forget the name of it, but rhythmic sort of oscillation through the airplane. So we'll just get the nose up. Reduce the power, that disappears. Awesome. Now there are other details, things like static discharge on the wicks. You can actually see the glow from them if you are in a position such as with a lot of electricity around, like a thunderstorm nearby. I haven't actually been able to see that in my time with the airplane yet, but I am going to keep trying. I really hope I get to. And also static discharge across the windscreen. So it's called St. Elmo's fire, the sort of glowing you get from the statics. But also you can get these discharges on the windscreen. So again, just a really astonishing amount of detail put in. Now I have to show you, of course, what stalling looks like in this airplane, just to prove that it can stall. So we bring the power back to idle, you get the gear warning for the horn. Sorry, the horn for the gear warning. And then as we trim the nose up, if I raise the nose enough, it will actually give us that beep. You hit the RPM drop, the engines can't maintain the RPM, so that you go constant. There's a stall warner. If I pull the nose up into the buffet, and the nose just drops. Not as aggressive as we saw in the Tomahawk, but it isn't supposed to be. But if you keep going, you will eventually drop a wing. So we'll nose down, get some power in, roll to the horizon, and pitch up. Now the airplane's flying again. So there you go. So relatively benign stall characteristics actually. I'm quite impressed with them. But yeah, the stall is modelled, and it does feel like a live airplane. Again, I wouldn't really want to stall an airplane at this size of weight, but it seems relatively benign, especially compared to the Tomahawk. Now the RPMs are at max, and I'm going to just join a bit of a circuit, a bit of a half circuit here at Oxford, and we'll do a landing just to try out the landing. Now I have had quite a few landings with it, and it's a really pleasant airplane. I think it's pretty straightforward to what you'd expect. So we get ourselves down to 1100 feet for the circuit. We've got the cowl flaps open. We've got the propeller and mixtures at max. Descending down now. Airfield passing beneath us. Just slowing down a bit. And we'll just join downwind here. Get the first stage of flap out. Roll it downwind. And drop the gear. Last stage of flaps. There's the airfield. Don't want to get too slow. A little hard to do in the simulator, this sort of GA part of flying, as you try and look around. One thing that can help is if you have head tracking, because you can keep an eye out those windows. A little bit fast, we've got the flaps out, taking the power off, trimming the nose up a bit, keep the power on. Don't want to come back to idle. You get a lot of drag from those propellers at idle thrust. Now this is going to be quite a short final. It's a little bit sporty for a circuit. Now this is a quick aeroplane. You don't have much time to correct your mistakes. There we go, 2 whites, 2 reds. That's worked out. Don't want to get any lower. Trimmed out for the correct speeds. So adding the power if we need it. It's very responsive on the power. Crossing the threshold, idle, into the flare, hold it, there's touchdown, using the rudder to keep it straight. Beautiful sound effects as well, and then we're just getting those brakes so we don't use the whole runway. And here we are back on the ground. It's a really pleasant airplane to land and taxi on the runway. I've got to say, I really enjoy the feeling it gives. And we'll set the parking brake. There we go. Welcome back to the grounds. Of course, I have to show you the turboprop version. So here we are in the Turbine, and you'll hear immediately the sounds are very different, but equally excellent. I think the sound effects are once again just so good. A bit more of a roar. These are big engines to have on a small airplane. To have 2 of them, when realistically this airplane only needs 1, gives this utterly ridiculous performance. 4,000 feet per minute climb, easily achievable, and you're going to go faster and It does slightly reduce the ceiling of the aircraft by 2,000 feet to 28,000 feet bizarrely, even though you now have effectively jet engines. But anyway, you can see inside the cockpit is suitably adjusted. So you have the torque showing instead of the manifold pressure, and then you've got the turbine temperature and the NG and the propeller RPM all down here. So this is a whole new set of management. You've got the beta range with a new simulation of that, and then as you can see, you have to limit how you manage the engines and the torque and so on, so be careful. You just have a fuel cutoff as opposed to a so this is condition, but it's, yeah, instead of mixture, it's just a cutoff lever, because over here is where you can adjust the propeller's RPM. So some of the differences, if you bring up the EFB in here, you also have the schematics but set up instead for the turbine version. So I really like that that is featured. And there's something called FOD, which is foreign object damage or debris, and this is what will show up. Let's say we have rain. You'll see that this shows stuff being ingested into the engine. In this case, rain, intensity 0%. Oh, we better reduce the power. It's running away from us on the brakes and the wets there. So we'll stop the aeroplane, and yeah, you can see here that you have FOD intensity at the moment 0%, but what you can do is you can actually open up the separator doors or the deflector doors, and you'll see that open down at the bottom, and it changes the configuration here. And that's a system to make sure that any ice or debris from outside doesn't get drawn into the actual internal of the engine. It's a way of getting it from inside here, and then it's deflected out using gravity, because remember, these engines don't go directly through like on a normal jet engine. The way the debris actually goes through is that the air goes in and reverses and then back round out the exhaust. So it's quite a complex or quite an unusual setup. So yeah, this is how it would be done differently. So pretty cool, I think. Very cool. So if you fancy a turbine aircraft, you have this option available. By the way, let's sort out some of these lights. Let's have a look at the lighting. So I'll just get rid of the EFB, and let's put on all the lights outside. So beacon and recognition, wing eyes, tax lights, landing lights, and we'll do stroke. There we go, look at that. Fantastic lighting. So that's all for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope it's been interesting for you. This is a really remarkable simulation. There is a lot of depth, a lot going on with this airplane, and I've really struggled to even scratch the surface in this video today. There's a lot more to learn, including managing those engines, those cylinder head temperatures, and of course you have the turbine version to get your teeth stuck into if you want to fly that instead. It is a pricey add-on, I think, in my opinion, from what we've seen on the market for the similar prices, especially if you want to have both variants. But in terms of, I think, one variant, in particular the piston version, if you pick that up at its price, I think this aircraft is more than worth it. The level of detail and effort that's gone into it, the sounds alone are just remarkably good. Then in my opinion, it is worth that price if this is the sort of airplane you could see yourself flying. If you want to have both, then you have to be a pretty keen Duke fan, but that is also an option for you. And of course, if you want to fly that longer range, faster stuff, then you'll get the turbine variant instead. That's all then. Thank you so much for watching. As I said, this is a preview build of the aircraft, so some things are not complete or may change by the time it launches, but hopefully coming soon to Microsoft Flight Simulator. Please do keep safe and well. We'll see you on the channel with more videos, guides, live streams and previews like this, so do please subscribe if you'd like to see them. Otherwise, we'll see you again soon. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.